Good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to our live briefing for Thursday, April 30th. Today I will provide you with a couple of updates. Then you're going to hear from Anita Adkins, who is our Incident Command Team Communications Chief, and she's going to share with you some of the processes that we go through to put together all of our different communication efforts. Then you're going to hear from Will Blackwell with more information regarding the COVID-19 regulations in long-term care. After Will, Deborah Jacobson has some information for you. And lastly, Lynn McClintock will introduce our resident pastoral care segment today. So we're excited about that. As always, I'll start out with a quick look at the COVID data. In Virginia, since yesterday, we're up to 90,843 tests. Overnight, we had over 5,500 individuals tested, which is the largest day of testing yet. The governor's information that I heard both this morning and yesterday indicated the goal is to get us over 7,500 tests per day in the coming week or two. So getting up to 5,500 is a good bump because the highest we'd been was about 2,600 prior to yesterday. Cases were at 15,180. As we see more tests, we will see more positives, but that's not really the measure. The measure is what they call the positivity rate. So if we were to do, they did do 5,536 tests yesterday. Of that, there were 852 positive. That's a positivity rate of 16.5 or 6%. That's the number they're tracking on. That number needs to start to go down, and it's been more or less stable to slightly increasing. So we'll be watching that closely, that positivity rate, and you'll hear more about that probably on the news because that's really the measure that all these states are looking at. We have 1,550 people that have been hospitalized or are currently hospitalized. There's been 543 deaths. Over 2,100 people have now recovered in Virginia. Locally, in Henrico, we're up to 876 cases. Chesterfield's at 513 cases. Richmond's at 339, and Hanover has 118 cases. We're tracking on, in long-term care within the Commonwealth of Virginia, we have 116 outbreaks, meaning there's more than one case within a nursing facility. And then right before I came to do this briefing today, I heard of another one. I was on a call where we talked about a new outbreak here in the metro area. So that's a current look at it. We'll keep doing that. And I know that data is available in lots of places, but I think it's important and it's something we talk about every day as a team. Earlier this morning, we had our governor's task force call that I sat in on. The focus of the meeting today was really on testing, personal protective equipment, and lastly on planning for what would be what our industry's calling a surge. Really, after all these folks get into the hospital and they start to need to come home, is there going to be adequate capacity? In terms of testing, it's interesting, the governor has mobilized the National Guard, and the National Guard has developed what they're calling a point prevalence survey. These are a survey process where they essentially bring a large National Guard team on campus. They set up a tent. They push. They can do up to 500 individual tests in a given day. This process has been up for about 2 weeks. I learned this morning that the National Guard has been utilized 9 times thus far for long-term care facilities in Virginia, doing these mass testing days. We heard this morning that in terms of personal protective equipment, there's supplies now moving in large numbers to the state of Virginia, and that all nursing homes that take Medicare and Medicaid, which we would qualify under that criteria, will be receiving 7 days worth of personal protective equipment in the coming week or two. So that will include us. We'll get a big shipment from, and these supplies are coming from FEMA. So it's something we'll be adding into our inventories in the next couple of weeks. The other topic is one that we have a little bit of familiarity with already, which is we learned this morning that the CDC will be doing remote assessments of facilities to determine how prepared we are and what our response has been. You might recall, either I or Will shared with you a couple of weeks ago, we had what was called a focused survey right after we had our first case. Now they're starting to do that on a broader basis. I think 50 facilities will be done in the coming weeks. So we'll probably look forward to that happening here at some point, although we've already, as I said, we've already had one focus survey. And then lastly, like I mentioned, there's a lot of discussion about how all the folks who are currently in the hospital and sick will be cared for in long-term care when they're ready to be discharged. So moving on, I want to share with you some other things. First is that Scott Jonte and the dining leadership team have been anticipating that there would be a disruption in the food supply chain, and over the course of the last few weeks have been working hard to procure products so that we have a steady supply. And just in the last couple of days, we have received 3 to 4 weeks of meat and poultry and have more than enough supply to get through really most all of May. And he and his team will continue to work hard to ensure that we have both an adequate supply and a safe supply of food products coming into the campus. Other thing, just a reminder, although you probably don't need it today with the rain, we're not allowing, and we can't do any pickups of items at the fence line from families or at the gatehouse. These kind of actions really put everybody at risk, and it's just a process that we're not prepared to do. We do have good processes to make sure you can get product at Azalea delivered to the drivers, and they'll bring it to you if your family wants to get you things or you need things from the grocery. We ask that if you want to see your family, we're happy to set up opportunities for you to do video chat with them. If you need help with that, please call help at extension 4026, and we will make sure somebody gets you connected so that you can get on either FaceTime or Skype or one of these video chat opportunities where you can spend some time seeing your family face to face. So thank you for those things. That's a lot of information, I realize. I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to invite Anita Adkins to share with you our communications process.
Well, good afternoon. Our whole organization is working really hard to make sure that we can keep everyone informed. Our residents, your family members, all of our employees, our board of trustees, and the broader community. So I'm going to share some behind-the-scenes details as communications chief of the incident command team about how we get this information out. During our morning meetings, which happen 6 days per week, we stay up to date on our latest policies and procedures related to our COVID-19 response and the ongoing changes to how we're operating in many of our departments. Then we make sure that the latest news is disseminated through all of our channels, our website at wcrichmond.org, Facebook, Touchtown community apps, TV 970 and 971, through the tales, written memos, email, and more. To prepare for these weekday live briefings, we collect updates for you throughout the day, and then we meet at 2 o'clock to make sure that we are as clear as we can be about what's being shared and what questions we're hearing from you. We go live at 3 p.m. like we are now, and then as soon as possible after, we produce a written summary and recording of what was shared. We send it to all of our staff via email, publish it on our blog at wcrichmond.org so that anyone in the community can read and watch it, and we send it through a message through Touchtown community apps. After that, the video is shared on Facebook and YouTube, And here on campus, you can watch the update recording on TV 970 on every hour. So this constant flow of information helps us keep the latest news available to you, and we hope that you'll take advantage of all of these ways to stay up to date. If you need help accessing Touchtown community apps, you can also call IT at extension 4026 or email help@wcrichmond.org. Our public relations team is also working hard to keep our TV 970 content up to date. So a lot of the programming that we're used to attending together in person, like our chapel services, fitness classes, and theater performances, is now available for you to watch on TV 970. In yesterday's Tales, there's a new calendar that lists the dates and times of all of the new programming for the coming week. So you'll be able to enjoy new movies, a Frankie Valli tribute program, and one of our local favorite musicians, Susan Greenbaum. So I hope you'll check out that schedule and watch a lot of that programming. Switching to a different topic, I also want to bring you an update from the foundation. We want to say a huge thank you for your generosity, especially right now during these very uncertain times. We are very grateful for your gifts to two of our greatest needs right now, the WEAVE program for our employees and our fellowship program for seniors in need. So as we've shared before, WEAVE stands for Workforce, Education, Assistance, Volunteerism, Engagement. So your gifts help our employees throughout the year as they pursue education, volunteer in Richmond, and especially when they need assistance during emergencies. So thank you for showing your appreciation for our employees with your tax-deductible gifts to WEAVE, because you're making a very big difference in the lives of our employees. Westminster Canterbury also promises every resident that they'll never be asked to leave due to an inability to pay through no fault of their own. And that's thanks to our fellowship program for seniors in need. So annually, around 110 residents receive financial support through this confidential program that provides housing, meals, and medical care to many of your neighbors. So now, perhaps more than ever, the fellowship program is needed to help us keep this promise of security and peace of mind for all of our residents. So thank you so much for your generous support of this important program. So we know that many of you are asking how you can help during this crisis, and we're really grateful that you're reaching out and helping by supporting these programs. If you have questions or are interested in making a gift or learning more about these areas of greatest need, please feel free to give me a call at extension 6202. And we thank you so much for all of your care and encouragement. Up next is Will Blackwell.
Good afternoon, everyone. As John mentioned, it's a scary thought to have an outbreak, and every time we hear of another facility having an outbreak, it just causes a lot of anxiety for me and John and others. So thank you for what you're doing. Please stay in your apartments, exercise when you can, but please follow the rules that we have right now in place for your protection, because we want everyone to stay safe. Today I want to talk about two questions and answers that CMS provided to us. And one of the questions that I want to share with you is, what type of healthcare workers are allowed to enter the nursing home? In the CMS memorandum that was sent out, it states that healthcare workers who do not work in the nursing home, such as a hospice worker, a surveyor, EMS personnel, and other vendors, should be permitted to come into the facility as long as they meet the CDC guidelines for healthcare workers. So what exactly does that mean? Facilities should screen the healthcare worker based on the CDC guidance, and with exceptions made for urgent entry to deliver emergency care. So in other words, the healthcare workers that actually come into the healthcare center are screened just like our employees, and they have to answer the screening questions and get a temperature check before they're allowed to come in. The next question is, can residents leave the nursing home for an appointment or an outside activity? The answer to that is facilities should consider the necessity of the appointment for the resident's health and whether it's critical for the residents to attend that appointment. If the appointment is not critical, it recommends that the appointment be deferred to a later date, to be accomplished virtually if the resident agrees. Decisions and any concerns about keeping or postponing the appointment should be discussed with the resident representative, and the resident's physician. If attending the appointment is necessary, the facility should arrange for the resident to attend, giving the resident a surgical mask to wear while attending the appointment. Also, the facility should monitor the resident upon returning for fever and signs and symptoms of respiratory infection for 14 days after an outside appointment. With regard to outside activities, CMS recommends that no group activities, such as internal or external group activities, be discontinued at this time. They all should be canceled, and everybody should continue to follow the rules that we have in place by staying in your apartment and taking care of yourselves. Up next is Deborah Jacobson with some more information to share with you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I do have a few announcements for you and some follow-up information according to the areas that are not regulated, meaning independent living, in the same subjects that Will was speaking to you about. Residents who live outside the care areas, such as in independent living, may make appointments to go out for medical appointments. We do ask you to make those appointments scheduled with our transportation department. Our transportation department will take you to the appointment and pick you up from the appointment. The driver will have on a mask, and also the resident will be asked to sit behind the driver, and you will have on a mask as well. When going to doctor's appointments, it will be go to the appointment, come straight back, and you're free to go back to your apartment. If your appointment is for a procedure that involves the hospital, even if it's just a day appointment, when you return, if you return to your independent living apartment, we will ask you to be quarantined in your apartment for 14 days. This also pertains to those residents in independent living that go out to the hospital and stay a few days and then come back to their apartment. Residents needing to handle business, such as going to the bank, can also make appointments with our transportation department. Again, the driver will have on a mask, you will have on a mask, and the only appointments that we're able to take you to at this point would be something that you can handle through the window at the bank or at the business. As far as activities in the independent living, this is just a reminder that all of our campus is closed to group activities. We're not quite ready to start discussing some of the spaces that will reopen and how we're going to do that. We do appreciate your patience and understanding as we, again, try to stick to these measures. The next one I am going to read to you because it is very complicated. This is about the absentee ballot application, the dual primary election, which is Tuesday, June the 23rd. Henrico County Voter Registrar has notified us that the district is only hosting a Republican primary for the upcoming dual primary election, which is scheduled for the 23rd. If you've already submitted your absentee ballot to vote in the Democratic primary, please know that you will not receive the ballot. If you did your application, you will not receive a ballot back. If you'd like to participate in the Republican primary for our district, even though you initially selected Democratic, you can notify the Resident Services Office or Anne Marie Middlesworth at Henrico Voter Registrar's office, and you will be given that ballot. We apologize for this inconvenience. It is very confusing, but we were just notified of this change. Library books. As mentioned in the tales, you can return your library books on Monday to the return box in the back office. The books will be sanitized and returned to the shelves. Please do not take the books from the return box as they have not been sanitized. Mask. We continue to offer masks for our residents. You may request one by calling Emily Williamson at 6082. Emily's done a great job of the distribution of those masks, along with Sarah Abernathy, who's collected all those masks from our volunteers. A big thank you for all that are involved. Publix. As Jess Goldberg told you this week, Monday is the beginning of our relationship with Publix. Please call 6262 on Monday to order and refer to this week's tales for all the instructions. We continue our Monday, Wednesday, Friday drop-off at Azalea for your friends and family. And we thank the transportation drivers for the effort that goes into making this successful. You'll remember recently we did open it up to accept items going back to Azalea for your friends and family. We asked you to make sure you notify us that you have a package going back, or bags, or whatever, and make sure that your family knows that particular day to pick it up. We're having a little bit of a problem that we're taking items over and the families are not there to pick them up, so let's make sure it's the same day. We know Mother's Day is coming up, and just a reminder that just like with Easter, sending your packages, flowers, and others through the mail, through FedEx or UPS is the best way to get them to your family member. Gifts can also be dropped off at Azalea on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And as John mentioned to you, as you go along time and you really want to reach out to your family, we will help you with FaceTime, Skype, and Zoom. The resident does need to initiate the appointment, and you do that through the IT department by dialing 4026. Again, we are doing everything in our power to help you reach out to your families and for your families to be able to know that you're doing great and that we're here for you. Again, have a great day. And next up is Lynn McClintock.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lynn McClintock, Director of Pastoral Care. I just have one brief announcement to begin. Our daily prayer book for May is hot off the press and available to you all. If you would like a daily prayer book, which has wonderful prayers for each day and also the worship bulletins for our Thursday chapel services, please call Vanessa Perry at 1502 or David Curtis at 5179, and we will get these to you. They're also available on the Touchtown app, so you can look for it there. We really do love the prayers and the worship items in here this month. In particular, the Today's Prayer section of each day is written by our resident clergy. So we hope that you will enjoy hearing the words of your fellow residents in some of these prayers. And speaking of fellow residents, today we have a very special guest who will give us a little bit of a theological reflection or a pastoral reflection. I know you all will join me in welcoming Reverend Bill Blake.
Thank you, Lynn. Good afternoon, everyone. Reading today is from the Gospel of St. Luke, chapter 24, verses 13 through 16. I read to you these words. On that same day, 2 of Jesus' disciples were going to a village named Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. And they were talking to each other about all the things that were taking place and had taken place in the city that day. As they talked and discussed, Jesus himself drew near and walked along with them. They saw him, but somehow they did not recognize him. I've been familiar with this story ever since I was a child in Sunday school. But it has been only recently that a side of it leaped from the pages into my consciousness. How might the great God in Christ has spent the first day of his return to life after having been brutally slain 3 days earlier. Here is the most colossal event in all history. Christ is triumphant over death and promises that all humanity might join him. How herald this utterly unique news? What might have been the divine agenda on that signal day? Surely an appearance in the temple court before the great crowds that had condemned him to death a few days earlier, before the religious authorities, surely an appearance before them would have been on the agenda. An audience at Caesarea Philippi with Governor Pilate would have been appropriate. And then swiftly off to Rome to have an encounter with the Roman Emperor, Tiberius. And then a cosmic display in the heavens at nightfall to cap things off. These are the things one might have expected to have been on the divine agenda that great day. But nothing of the kind. I find it absolutely astonishing that Christ spent a good part of that first Easter Sunday joining a couple of his defeated and disillusioned disciples, trudging along a rusty roadway and heading to a one-horse town. I don't know the gospel writer Luke's intention for including these seemingly insignificant occurrence in this narrative. But for me, other than the resurrection itself, it is the most heartening happening of the day and a truth for all time. God in Christ is here assuring us that God's focus is upon the simple, ordinary, everyday humans and their struggles for understanding and peace. Every day, we need this presence, we need this awareness, and certainly in our time now. As St. Bernard of Clairvaux, 12th century mystic, put it in our prayer for the day, "O Jesus, O Jesus, ever with us stay. Make all our moments calm and bright. Banish the sin of earth, we pray. Shed o'er the world thy holy light." Amen. See you all tomorrow at 3 o'clock for the next update.